Now, joining us from Toronto to discuss the implications for the two detained Canadian citizens is Canada's former Minister of Immigration, Chris Alexander. Thanks so much for joining us here on TRT World. Now, Chris, from here, it looks like simply a case of retaliation for the arrest of Meng Wanzhou on December the 1st. What are your thoughts?
Well, everyone here knows that's exactly what it is. As our former ambassador said, there are no coincidences when it comes to arrests like this that are clearly politically motivated in China. But this exchange of unpleasant moves, the rule of law taking its course in Canada and the absence of the rule of law taking its course, unfortunately, in China, are part of a much larger issue, which is this U.S. China trade negotiation, which obviously involves, has implications for Canada, the European Union, Japan, and many others, which is also bound up with the whole question of the rule of law in the U.S. and the U.S. effort to restore sanctions, even tougher sanctions against Iran, in response to Iran's clear sponsorship of terrorism in the Middle East and around the world. So there are three large issues here: Canada-China, U.S.-China, and then Iran facing a tougher sanctions regime from the U.S. and others, all bound up together. And unfortunately, two poor Canadians are innocent victims of this escalation.
Yeah, and so you mentioned those three scenarios, and this clearly raises the stakes now in all of them. What can and should Canada do next?
Well, we have to be firm. We have an ambassador of China here in our country who is claiming that what we've done is arbitrary, that we're using the courts and the extradition treaty with the United States to serve our commercial interests. That's absolute nonsense. We know which countries have the rule of law, have working, respected justice systems, and which ones don't. And in this case, China needs to respect the fact that one of its nationals has been accused of having violated a sanctions regime that the United States takes very seriously. All of our countries have sanctions regimes. In this case, the U.S. one has been violated, and the course of justice in the U.S. Is going to move forward. And we, as an ally of the United States, as a country, one of dozens of countries that have extradition treaties with the United States, are doing our part. I think Ms. Meng was extremely naive to think she could come through Canada and not be subject to the international agreements that Canada and our Prime Minister has confirmed we are committed to uphold with the United States and our other allies that uphold the rule of law.
And I just want to ask you, how do you think this is going to end? Because there is a precedent, and just thinking now at the case of Kevin Garrett back in 2014, he was held for 750 days. So not a good precedent.
Absolutely not. But every day that these two Canadians are falsely accused in China, essentially held as political hostages in this larger, as part of this larger debate and discussion, China's image in Canada and elsewhere will suffer. There is fear now among Canadians, other foreigners who travel regularly to China, that they may be next, that their lives may be held in the balance arbitrarily by China. And so there's going to have to be a real discussion in Beijing about how far they want to take this. We know that it's a one-party state. We know there isn't the rule of law in China. Word of that, that reality hasn't affected too many foreigners lately in China. If it starts to lead to panic and increasing fear, China's going to pay a severe price, as it is paying a price already in its difficult trade negotiations with the U.S.
Really strong thoughts there. Thank you so much for your analysis, Chris. That was Chris Alexander. He is Canada's former Minister of Immigration.